The twin suns of Arcanus burned bright over the massive Colosseum, their golden light glinting against towers of steel and banners of alien clans. The galactic arena had stood for nearly 1,000 years, older than some civilizations that now filled its seats. Here, champions fought not for survival, but for glory, honor, and pride before the watching galaxy. Every contest was broadcast to billions of homes across star systems. For many, it was more than sport. It was tradition, culture, and the stage where legends were made. On this day, the Colosseum was louder than ever. The grand tournament was about to begin. Beasts from warlike planets roared in cages. Armored gladiators polished their blades. Alien champions with weapons of plasma, steel, and crystal tested their strength against training machines. The crowd was already stamping their feet, chanting for blood and spectacle. Among the noise, a single human figure walked quietly down a side passage into the arena's preparation hall. His name was Elias. He carried no armor, no weapons of gleaming light, no banner of a clan. His clothes were simple, a worn traveler's robe that looked far too plain compared to the shining armor of other fighters. The most unusual thing he carried was a long wooden broom. Its bristles were rough and uneven, the kind used to sweep dust from old stone floors. Compared to the swords and cannons of the other fighters, it looked laughable, like a farmer had wandered into the wrong place. A group of alien gladiators noticed him as he entered. They were towering creatures, their scaled skin glistening under the light. They laughed at the sight of the broom. "Human," one of them rumbled, his voice deep as thunder. "Have you lost your way?" "The cleaning crew works outside, not in the arena." The others burst into cruel laughter, their teeth sharp and shining. Elias said nothing. He only kept walking, his broom resting across his shoulder like a soldier's staff. His eyes were calm and his steps steady. He did not react to the mockery. The gladiators frowned, expecting him to flinch or leave. But he passed them by without a word, his presence strangely unshaken. Inside the arena proper, the announcers were preparing the opening speech. Holograms filled the air, showing the faces and names of champions. The Colosseum shook as drums and horns announced the start of the first matches. Species from across the galaxy sat in the stands, waving flags, holding glowing signs, and chanting for their favorites. When Elias's name appeared on the display, there was confusion. Few even knew what a human was anymore. Humanity had once been known across the galaxy centuries ago, during the era of great exploration. Their soldiers and thinkers had earned respect for their creativity and adaptability. But over time, human influence had faded. Wars, isolation, and the collapse of their colonies made them almost forgotten. Now humanity was thought of as weak, scattered, and unimportant, and here was one of them, standing in the greatest tournament of the galaxy, holding a broom. The crowd erupted in laughter. "Is this a joke?" Voices shouted from the stands. "Did the human send a cleaner to fight? Where is his weapon? Where is his armor? Pathetic." Even the commentators struggled not to laugh. "Ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy," one of them said through the loudspeakers, "it seems we have an unusual competitor today. A human armed with, what looks like a broom. Truly, the arena never fails to surprise." The audience howled with laughter. They pointed, mocked, and cheered. Not for Elias, but for the humiliation they expected to watch. Elias stood at the edge of the arena floor, his broom lightly touching the ground. His face remained calm. His eyes scanned the crowd, but he did not look angry. He only waited, as though he had been here before. In the shadows of the high stands, a few elders of alien races sat quietly. Unlike the younger crowd, they did not laugh. Their eyes narrowed as they watched the human. Something about the way he held himself was different. His shoulders were straight but not stiff. His grip on the broom was relaxed yet balanced. It was the way one held a weapon, not a tool. One of the elders leaned toward another and whispered, "Do you see it? His posture, his stance. It is familiar." The other nodded slowly. "Yes, I have not seen it in centuries. Could it be?" They said no more, but their eyes stayed locked on Elias. The gong sounded, signaling the first match. Elias's opponent stepped forward. It was a giant beast of a fighter from the world of Korath. Its body was armored with natural plating, and it carried claws that gleamed with sharpened plasma edges. The beast roared, shaking the arena with its voice. The crowd cheered wildly, already imagining the human being torn apart. The announcer's voice boomed. In this corner, the beast of Korath, undefeated in 20 matches, and in the other corner, Elias of Earth, armed with a broom. The laughter returned like thunder. The gong rang again. The fight began. The beast charged, its massive claws raised high. Dust flew as its heavy feet pounded across the ground. Elias did not move until the last second. Then, with a swift and almost casual step, he shifted his weight, sweeping the broom low against the beast's legs. The crowd gasped as the monster stumbled, its momentum thrown off. Elias turned with fluid grace, using the broom's handle to strike a precise point at the back of the beast's knee joint. The massive fighter crashed into the sand, roaring in confusion. It scrambled up and slashed again. This time Elias spun, aside, his broom whirling in an arc that deflected the claws just enough to miss him. His movements were not fast in a flashy way, but smooth, controlled, and always one step ahead. Every strike of the broom landed exactly where it needed to. A nerve cluster, a weak joint, a point of imbalance. The crowd fell silent. Within minutes, the beast of Korath, famed for its strength, was on the ground again, unable to rise. Elias stood above it, his broom pressed lightly against its throat. The fight was over. The arena erupted, but not in laughter this time. Shocked voices cried out, "How? Impossible! The human, he defeated the beast with a broom." The announcers were speechless. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe my eyes. The human has won his first match, with a broom." Elias stepped back, lowering his broom, and gave a small, respectful bow to his fallen opponent. There was no arrogance, no celebration, only quiet acknowledgement. The beast struggled up, growled, and then did something rare. It bowed back, a sign of respect. In the stands, whispers spread like wildfire. Who is he? No human should move like that. That was not luck. That was mastery. The elders exchanged glances. One of them, a scholar of ancient battles, whispered, "I remember a time long ago when humans were not forgotten. There was one they called the Master of Motion. He fought not with weapons but with whatever he touched. Sticks, poles, even tools. His style was unlike anything we had seen. He disappeared centuries ago." The other elder looked back at Elias, who now stood calmly at the edge of the arena, broom in hand. His expression was serene, as if he had not just stunned the galaxy. The elder's eyes narrowed. Could it be that the master has returned? Elias said nothing to the roaring crowd. He simply waited for the next match. His broom bristles brushed softly against the sand, as though sweeping a quiet path through history itself. The galaxy laughed at him once. Now, they were no longer certain. For the first time in centuries, whispers of humanity stirred again. And so the story began. The air in the great Colosseum still trembled from the echoes of the first battle. Sand was scattered where the beast of Korath had fallen, its massive form still being carried away by medics. The crowd, once mocking and laughing, now sat in stunned silence. Even those who loved to shout and jeer could not find words after what they had just witnessed. The human, Elias, stood quietly at the edge of the arena floor, his broom resting against his shoulder. His breathing was calm, steady, as though the fight had not tested him at all. His face showed no pride, no arrogance. It was the expression of a man who had done nothing more than sweep away dust from a floor, and yet the galaxy was shaken. The change in the crowd at first, whispers carried across the seats. "Did you see that? He moved like flowing water." No, human could do that. They are weak, forgotten. But he did it. He defeated the beast without even a weapon. The laughter that had once filled the arena was gone. In its place was unease. The audience had come for blood and spectacle, but what they had received was something stranger, something that did not fit their understanding. The commentators struggled to explain. "Ladies and gentlemen," one voice echoed nervously, "what we just saw, I cannot put into words. The human competitor Elias fought with a broom, and yet he brought down the mighty beast of Korath. Was it chance? Trickery? Or is there something more to this man?" The second commentator cleared his throat. "It may have been luck. The beast slipped, perhaps, but still there was skill. Yes, skill in his movements." But even as they tried to convince themselves, the image of Elias's calm, precise strikes replayed again and again on the giant holographic screens. Above, there had been no luck, no accident, only mastery. In the shadows far above the cheering crowd, in a quiet chamber reserved for nobility and elders, a group of older aliens sat watching. Their faces were serious, their eyes sharp. These were not ordinary spectators. They were veterans of old wars, keepers of memory, beings who had lived long enough to remember histories others had forgotten. One of them, an ancient Avrilian with skin like polished stone, leaned forward. His voice was low but filled with certainty. "I have seen that style before. Long ago." Another elder, a scaled being from the Drakth race, turned his head. "You mean the stories? The master of motion?" "Yes," the Avrilian whispered. "The one who fought with staff and stick, who turned tools into weapons. He vanished centuries ago. But the way this human moves, it is the same." The Drakth frowned. "Impossible. That was ages past. No one could live so long." "Perhaps," the Avrilian said, his eyes still locked on Elias. "Or perhaps the legend has returned." Elias in the preparation hall. After his victory, Elias was led back through the tunnels of the Colosseum to the preparation hall. The other fighters stared at him as he passed. Some looked amused, but many more looked uneasy. Warriors who had trained their whole lives with plasma blades and heavy armor now saw a man who had entered with nothing but a broom, and won. A tall insectoid fighter stepped forward, his antennae twitching. "Human," it hissed. "What trick did you use? Was the broom hidden with technology?" Elias paused, his calm gaze resting on the creature. He lifted the broom slightly, showing its rough wood and simple bristles. "It is only a broom," he said softly. The insectoid clicked its mandibles in frustration. "Impossible. No broom could defeat a warrior of Korath." But Elias only gave a small bow of respect, then moved on. His silence was more unsettling than any answer. The next match hours later, the gong rang again. The next round was about to begin. The crowd was restless, buzzing with curiosity and doubt. Some still believed Elias's victory had been an accident, a strange fluke. Others waited eagerly, hoping to see more of his strange style. The announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, the human returns for his second match. Will his broom serve him again, or will his luck finally run out?" His opponent this time was no beast but a champion warrior, a tall armored alien from the Riken Empire. The Riken gladiator carried a spear of glowing energy, its blade humming with deadly light. He bowed stiffly before the fight, but his smile was cruel. "You embarrassed us all, human," he sneered. "But I will end this farce. Your broom will break before me." Elias bowed in return, saying nothing. The gong sounded. The Riken lunged forward, spear thrusting in a blur of light. The crowd gasped at the speed of the strike, but Elias moved like water flowing around stone. He sidestepped, his broom shifting, in a subtle arc that guided the spear's tip away. The Riken struck again and again, faster each time. Sparks flew as the spear's blade grazed the sand, but Elias never fought force with force. His broom touched the spear lightly, redirecting its path. His feet slid across the ground in smooth patterns, always one step ahead. Then, with a sudden twist, Elias hooked the broom's handle against the Riken's wrist. The spear flew from his hands, spinning through the air. The broom's bristles struck against the champion's chest. Not hard, but precise. The Riken stumbled backward and fell, his armor clattering. Silence fell again. The fight was over in moments. Elias bowed once more, then stepped back, his broom resting in the sand. The crowd erupted, not with laughter this time, but with thunderous cheers. The growing rumor, by the end of the second day of the tournament, the galaxy was no longer mocking. Instead, they were whispering. Who is this man? Could he be a student of the old masters? No. Did you not see? His movements. They were the same as the stories. He fights like the master of motion. In taverns across star systems, in homes where families watched the tournament, the rumor spread. Children asked their parents about the old tales. Elders dug through forgotten records of human warriors. The name of the master returned to tongues where it had not been spoken in centuries. And always the question followed. Was this Elias truly a descendant, or was he the master himself? Elias alone. That night, when the Colosseum was quiet and the crowds gone, Elias sat alone in his chamber. His broom lay across his knees, and he slowly ran a hand along its handle. His eyes were distant, thoughtful. He did not fight for glory. He did not fight for cheers. His heart was far from the noise of the crowd. In his silence, memories came back, old battles, old faces, worlds long gone. The galaxy had forgotten humanity's strength. They had laughed at humans, dismissed them, erased their history from the songs of warriors. But Elias remembered. He had carried the knowledge through time, waiting, watching. Now, at last, he had stepped back into the light. The fear of the nobles. Not. Everyone was pleased with Elias's victories. In the upper chambers of the Colosseum, the nobles and rulers of alien empires gathered. Their voices were sharp with concern. This human, he should not have been allowed in the tournament. He is stirring old memories. Do you not see the danger? If humanity rises again? They are weak now, another said. One man cannot change that. But an elder voice interrupted. One man can awaken a people. If he is truly the master, then the galaxy must prepare. Silence followed those words. The third challenge announced as dawn rose over the Colosseum. Banners waved again, and the drums thundered. The announcers declared that Elias had advanced to the next stage. His opponent would not be a beast or a simple champion this time, but one of the galaxy's most skilled duelists, a warrior who had never been defeated. The crowd roared, eager to see if the broom would finally break. Elias stepped into the light once more. His broom brushed across the sand as he walked, steady and calm. The galaxy leaned forward to watch. The whispers had grown into a storm. The master had returned. The third morning of the grand tournament began with a sky full of banners and a sea of voices. The Colosseum was alive before the suns had fully risen. Traders sold glowing drinks in the stands. Children painted their faces with the colors of their favorite champions. And everywhere, from the lowest seats to the highest towers, people spoke of only one name, Elias. The human with the broom had become the talk of the galaxy. Some called him a fraud, a trickster who had only been lucky in his fights. Others swore they had witnessed true mastery in his movements. Arguments filled the markets and ships. For the first time in centuries, humanity had returned to the attention of billions. Elias prepares in the preparation hall. Elias sat quietly on a bench. He did not speak, nor did he polish his broom like a weapon. Instead, he closed his eyes, his hands resting on his knees. The broom leaned against the wall beside him. Fighters came and went, the hall filled with clanging armor and sharpening blades. Some sneered at him as they passed. Others avoided looking at him at all. The air carried both mockery and fear. A young fighter, barely more than a boy, approached him. The boy's armor was too big for his small frame, and his hands trembled around a simple blade. "Sir," the boy said softly, "are you not afraid?" Elias opened his eyes and looked at him. His gaze was calm, steady, like the stillness of water before dawn. "Fear is natural," he said, "but fear does not rule." The boy swallowed hard. "But your opponent today, he is the duelist of Veyron. He has never been defeated. His spear has ended champions from 50 worlds. Elias picked up his broom and stood. He tapped its handle lightly on the stone floor. No weapon is greater than the hand that guides it. The boy's eyes widened as though the words had struck something deep within him. Elias gave a small nod and walked away toward the arena gate. The duelist appears. The crowd roared as the announcer's voice thundered across the Colosseum. In this corner, undefeated across 50 duels, master of the energy spear, the duelist, of Varen. The duelist stepped into the arena. His armor gleamed like polished silver. His spear, a weapon of glowing energy, hummed with deadly power. He spun it with speed and precision, each movement sharp and exact. The crowd cheered wildly, for they knew this fighter well. He was a legend, a figure children trained to imitate. And in the other corner, the announcer hesitated, almost smiling. The human, Elias, armed as always, with a broom. The crowd exploded with mixed voices. Some laughed, though, not as loud as before. Others cheered, already believing they were about to witness something remarkable. And a few sat silently, watching with sharp eyes, waiting to see the truth of the man. Elias walked slowly into the arena. The sand crunched softly under his steps. His broom was in his hand, bristles dragging gently against the ground. He looked small compared to the shining duelist, yet his presence seemed to fill the space with quiet strength. The duelist raised his spear in salute. "Human," he called, his voice strong. "I do not know your tricks, but I respect skill. Show me what you are." Elias bowed slightly. "Then watch closely." The gong rang. The battle. The duelist moved first. His spear struck like lightning, a blur of energy that hummed through the air. The strike was perfect, trained from decades of practice. The crowd gasped as it flashed toward Elias, but the broom moved like a whisper. Elias angled the handle and the spear slid aside as though guided by unseen hands. His feet shifted in a simple step, carrying him smoothly out of danger. The duelist pressed harder. Strike after strike came, fast and flawless. Each thrust was meant to end the fight. But Elias's broom tapped, swept, and turned with calm precision. The spear was redirected again and again, its deadly power never landing. The duelist's eyes narrowed. He spun, changing rhythm, attacking from above and below. Still Elias was there, his broom gliding like water, his body never stiff, always flowing. Then came the moment. The duelist lunged with full force, his spear cutting the air in a sweeping arc. Elias bent low, the broom's bristles brushing the sand. In one smooth motion he rose, the broom handle catching the duelist's wrist. A twist, a step, and the spear was wrenched free. The crowd gasped as the glowing spear clattered into the sand. The duelist stumbled, staring in disbelief. Elias tapped the broom gently against his chest, lightly, respectfully, not to wound but to mark the end. The gong sounded. The match was over. The arena reacts for a heartbeat. Silence filled the Colosseum. Then the noise came like a storm. The cheers shook the very walls. Flags waved, voices screamed, and the name Elias thundered across the galaxy. The duelist, still stunned, slowly bowed. His pride as a warrior would not let him deny what had happened. Elias bowed in return, his expression calm as ever. In the stands, children shouted in joy. Merchants were already selling wooden brooms painted with Elias's name. And in the shadows the elders leaned close, their whispers sharp. "It is him," the Avrilian elder said. "There can be no doubt now. The master has returned." The spreading storm outside the arena, news spread faster than light. On distant planets, screens showed replays of the battle. Citizens gathered in taverns, on streets, in homes, watching again and again as the broom disarmed the duelist. On human colonies where people had long felt forgotten and weak, hope began to stir. Children pointed at the screen with shining eyes. "That's one of us," they cried. Elders wept quietly. remembering when humanity's strength had been honored. The name Elias was carried by every broadcast, every message. The galaxy was no longer laughing. The galaxy was watching. Elias alone. Again. That night, Elias walked the quiet halls of the Colosseum. He stopped by a window looking out at the twin suns sinking below the horizon. His broom rested against his shoulder. He heard footsteps. Turning, he saw the young fighter from earlier, the boy with trembling hands. "Sir," the boy said, his voice low, "you were incredible. The way you moved, the way you fought. It was like watching a story come alive." Elias looked at him gently. "Do not think of weapons. Think of balance. Think of movement. The weapon is only wood or steel. You are the one who gives it meaning." The boy's eyes shone. "Will you teach me?" For a long moment, Elias was silent. Then he gave a faint smile. "Perhaps one day." He turned back to the window. Outside, the stars were waking. Somewhere among them, he knew, were those who would fear his return. The nobles, the rulers, the old enemies of humanity. His victories would not go unanswered, but he was ready. The nobles' council in a grand chamber far from the arena. Alien rulers gathered. Their voices were tense. "This cannot continue," one growled. "If the humans believe they have a hero again, they will rise. They will demand respect. That will shift the balance of power." Another spoke sharply. "Do you not see? Already, their colonies are awakening. Already children chant his name. If this Elias is truly the master, then he carries knowledge that could change everything. What do you suggest?" The chamber fell silent. Then the eldest among them spoke slowly. "We must test him, push him, and if he survives, then we will know the truth." The rising storm back in the Colosseum, the announcer declared that Elias would advance to the quarterfinals. His next opponent would not be a beast nor a duelist, but a champion chosen by the nobles themselves, a warrior known for cruelty and overwhelming strength. The crowd cheered wildly, eager for more. But among them, whispers grew darker. Would Elias survive? Could even the master stand against what was coming? Elias walked calmly back to his chamber, the broom brushing softly against the stone floor. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of centuries. The storm was rising, and Elias would meet it head-on. The galaxy no longer laughed at the human with the broom. Now it leaned forward in silence whenever his name was spoken. Elias's victories had become the center of every conversation. On the streets, in the markets, in the ships that crossed, the stars. The duelist of Veyron had fallen before him, just as the beast of Korath had before that. The story spread across systems like fire through dry grass. Humanity, once forgotten, was being spoken of again. But not all voices were filled with wonder. Many were filled with fear. The nobles' concern. In a high chamber above the arena, the ruling council of nobles met in private. The stone walls were heavy with old banners, and guards stood at the doors to keep out curious ears. The nobles were not ordinary rulers. They were descendants of the oldest families, those who had shaped the Colosseum itself into the heart of galactic culture. For centuries they had balanced power between species, deciding which warriors were celebrated and which were forgotten. To them, the arena was not only sport, it was control. And now that control was threatened. "He cannot be allowed to continue," hissed a reptilian noble with scales like obsidian. "Every victory awakens the humans. Already their colonies cheer his name." "Agreed," said a tall avian noble, her feathers sharp as steel. "The crowd no longer mocks him. They honor him. If humanity gains honor again, they will seek a place among us once more." An older voice, calm and heavy, spoke last. It came from an Avrilian noble whose skin was like stone carved by time. "Perhaps honor is already theirs. We may be witnessing something greater than a fighter. We may be witnessing the return of the master." At those words, silence filled the chamber. None wished to admit it, but the truth hung between them. The way the human moved, The grace, the precision. It was not ordinary. Then we test him, the Avrilian said at last. Let us send against him the one champion none have faced and lived. If he falls, the matter ends. If he does not. He paused, eyes narrowing. Then we must prepare for a storm. The council agreed, the chosen opponent. The announcement shook the Colosseum the next morning. Ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy, the announcer cried. Today, Elias of Earth will face not a common beast, not a simple duelist, but the champion chosen by the noble council itself. A warrior undefeated in 100 battles, breaker of shields, crusher of empires, the Iron Colossus. The arena floor rumbled as massive gates opened. From the shadows, a giant emerged. The Iron Colossus stood twice the height of Elias, its body covered in thick plates of metal armor. Its fists were enormous, each as large as Elias's chest. Its eyes glowed red, and every step shook the ground like thunder. It carried no weapon, for its body itself was weapon enough. The crowd gasped, then roared. Many had never seen the Colossus fight, for its matches were rare and brutal. Its presence alone was enough to make hearts pound with fear. And across from it stood Elias, calm as always, broom in hand. The beginning of the battle. The gong rang. The Colossus charged, its armored feet tearing up the sand. Its massive fist came down like a falling mountain, aiming to crush Elias in a single blow. But Elias was no longer where he stood. With a light step, he slid aside, the broom brushing softly against the ground. The fist struck only sand, sending dust flying. The Colossus roared and swung again, wide and heavy. Elias ducked, the broom's handle glancing against the giant's wrist to redirect its strike. Instead of landing true, the Colossus struck its own knee, stumbling with a crash. That shook the arena. The crowd gasped, but the Colossus was not so easily defeated. It rose faster than expected, and swung both fists in a storm of blows. Metal cracked against air again and again, each strike strong enough to shatter stone. Elias's form blurred like a shadow between the strikes. His broom tapped, swept, redirected. Each time the Colossus thought it had him cornered, Elias was already gone. The turning point minutes passed. Sweat dripped down the faces of spectators as they held their breath. Never had they seen anyone move like this, so calm, so effortless against such overwhelming force. At last, Elias saw the moment he had waited for. The Colossus lifted its arm high for a crushing strike. Elias stepped in close, his broom sliding under the giant's elbow. With a twist and a shift of weight, he used the Colossus's own strength against it. The crowd gasped as the armored giant crashed to the sand flat on its back. For the first time in its long career, the Iron Colossus had been thrown down. Elias stood above it, broom pressed lightly against its armored chest. The gong rang. The fight was over. The crowd's realization, silence. Then thunder. The cheers of the crowd shook the Colosseum, louder than any before. Flags waved, children screamed his name, and even seasoned warriors rose to their feet in respect. Elias, Elias, Elias. No one laughed at the broom now. They had seen him defeat beast, duelist, and now Colossus. With each victory, the legend grew stronger. In the shadows of the noble chamber, however, there was no cheering, only silence and fear. It is him, the Avrilian noble whispered. The master has returned. The meeting with the elders later, when the arena was empty, Elias was summoned to a quiet hall. There waiting for him were 3 of the oldest beings in the galaxy, elders who had fought in wars long past. They studied him silently. Finally, one spoke. Human, who taught you these movements? Elias bowed slightly. I have always been a student. The broom, the staff, the spear, each is the same when the hand is steady. The elder narrowed his eyes. Do not hide. We know the style. It is the art of the master of motion. That art was lost centuries ago. Elias lifted his gaze. For a moment the silence was heavy. Then he spoke quietly, perhaps not lost, perhaps only waiting. The elders stared at him, and in their eyes was recognition. They did not press further. They already knew the truth. The galaxy reacts by nightfall. Every corner of the galaxy buzzed with his name. Holographic screens replayed the image of the Colossus falling again and again. Children practiced sweeping with brooms in imitation. On human colonies, people filled the streets with celebration. For the first time in generations, they felt pride, but elsewhere there was unease. Rulers feared rebellion. Generals remembered wars where humans had once been dangerous. Whispers spread in secret councils. If the master had returned, what would he bring? Elias reflects in his chamber. Elias sat alone once more. His broom rested across his knees, and his eyes were closed, in thought. He remembered a time when humanity's name carried weight. He remembered when the galaxy had both feared and respected them. He had walked through centuries carrying the knowledge of balance and movement, waiting for the right time. Now perhaps that time had come. He knew the nobles would not stop. They would send greater challenges. They would test him again and again. But he was ready, not for himself, but for humanity. The announcement of the final stage. The next morning, the announcers declared that Elias had reached the final stage of the tournament. His last opponent would be the reigning champion of the galaxy, a warrior who had held the title for 10 years, unmatched and feared. The crowd roared in excitement, but in the noble chambers, the air was heavy. If he defeats the champion, one noble whispered, then nothing can hide the truth. Humanity will rise again. And in the shadows, the Avrilian elder whispered to himself, the storm has begun. The Colosseum was alive with energy like never before. Banners waved, drums thundered, and holographic lights danced across the stands. The galaxy's greatest gathering was watching in awe and disbelief. Today would decide everything. Today, Elias, the human with the broom, would face the reigning champion of the grand tournament. The crowd chanted his name endlessly. Elias, Elias, Elias. Every alien species in the galaxy had eyes fixed on the arena floor. Some sat in excitement, others in fear. Rumors of Elias being the long-lost master of motion had spread far and wide. The stakes were no longer mere entertainment. They were a symbol of humanity's return. The champion enters from the massive gates on the far side of the arena. The reigning champion emerged. Known simply as Valrin, he was a warrior of immense skill and unchallenged might. His body gleamed in layers of advanced armor, his eyes sharp and calculating. His weapon, a long staff of pulsating energy, glowed with a hum that filled the entire arena. The crowd roared as Valrin raised the staff, high, signaling his readiness. Many whispered among themselves. No one had ever defeated him. 10 years of undefeated victories had built him a legend. And now, he faced a human armed with only a broom. The announcer's voice echoed over the arena. In this corner, the undefeated champion of the galaxy, Valrin, and in the other corner, Elias of Earth armed with a broom. Laughter broke out at first, but it died quickly. The crowd remembered the previous victories, the Beast of Korath, the Duelist of Veyron, the Iron Colossus. This was no ordinary human. The battle begins. The gong rang, a deep sound that vibrated through every stone of the arena. Valrin struck first. His staff whirled in a dazzling pattern, faster than the eye could follow. Every movement was calculated, designed to end the fight quickly. The crowd held its breath as the weapon flashed like lightning. Elias moved lightly, his broom tapping the sand with perfect balance. He sidestepped, ducked, and turned, redirecting Valrin's strikes with the broom's handle. Every attack Valrin unleashed seemed to be deflected by invisible hands. The champion's eyes widened. Impossible, he muttered. No one should move like this. Elias spoke softly, almost to himself. Strength is in the hand that guides, not the weapon that strikes. The flow of battle Valrin attacked from every angle, fast and relentless. Each swing of his staff carried the power of years of training. But Elias was not afraid. He flowed around each strike like water, using precise timing to redirect, parry, and evade. The broom, simple and unassuming, became an extension of his body. The audience could barely follow the speed of his movements. Some watched in awe, some in disbelief. The energy in the arena was electric. The old elders in the stands whispered to one another. "It is him," one said, "the master of motion, alive." "He is not a student," another replied. "He is the one who built the art itself." Even Valrin began to see it. The human's every move, every step carried centuries of knowledge and control. His attacks were not brute force, but mastery of balance, leverage, and timing. The turning point, Valrin's staff came down in a wide arc, glowing brighter than ever. Elias dodged, but only narrowly. Sand flew into the air, and sparks from the staff brushed against the arena floor. The champion pressed harder, faster, more desperate. Elias watched calmly, noting the openings between strikes. Then, with a sudden motion, he shifted his weight and swept the broom low, catching Valrin's foot. The staff wobbled in the champion's grasp. With a precise tap of the broom, Valrin's balance shifted. He stumbled, but quickly recovered. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen Valrin falter. Elias smiled faintly, his eyes calm. He knew the moment was coming. All it required was patience, timing, and flow, the essence of human mastery that had been lost for centuries. The master reveals himself. Elias moved closer. Every step was smooth, measured, and unbreakable. The broom glided across the arena floor like a blade of light. Valrin lunged forward with all his might, but Elias pivoted, using the champion's momentum against him. With one fluid motion, he guided the staff aside, tapped Valrin's chest lightly with the broom, and used a gentle twist to force the champion to the ground. The arena erupted. Cheers, screams, and clapping shook the stone walls. Valrin lay on the sand, stunned but unharmed. Elias stood over him, broom in hand. He did not strike again. He raised the broom as if lifting a flag of peace and victory. The gong rang. The battle was over. The crowd reacts. The roar of the audience was deafening. Many were on their feet, cheering for the human who had conquered, the unconquerable. Flags waved. Children cried with joy. Merchants shouted his name as they sold replicas of his broom. Even those who had doubted humanity's strength began to believe. Across the galaxy, millions watched the holograms replay the fight. Each replay confirmed the truth. Elias, armed with a broom, had defeated the greatest warrior of the galaxy. In the shadows, the nobles spoke in hushed, fearful tones. "He is the master," one whispered. "Not just a master," another replied. "He is humanity reborn." Valrin's respect. Valrin rose slowly. His staff hummed with residual energy. He approached Elias, bowed deeply, and spoke clearly for all to hear. "You are extraordinary. I have never faced such skill. You are no ordinary human. You are a master." Elias nodded once, humbly. "Thank you. You fought well." The crowd erupted even louder, now in awe of both warriors. Respect had replaced fear, and humanity's return was undeniable. The elders speak in. A quiet chamber, the oldest elders met once more. The Avrilian, the Dract, and the scaled noble from earlier whispered among themselves. "It is done," the Avrilian said softly. "The master has proven himself. Humanity is no longer forgotten." "Not only that," the Dract added. "The galaxy has seen what humans are capable of. They will never be dismissed again." The chamber fell silent as each elder contemplated the weight of history. The storm had begun, and humanity had risen from it. Elias's reflection. That evening, Elias walked alone through the now empty arena. The sand glowed faintly in the moonlight, dust drifting in soft waves. His broom rested lightly in his hand. He thought of the centuries he had walked in silence, carrying the knowledge of balance and motion. Humanity had faded from the galaxy, but he had preserved its art. Now the galaxy had seen it. Now humans would be remembered, respected, and feared once more. And yet, Elias's heart remained calm. He had not fought for glory. He had fought to remind the galaxy, and himself, of what humanity could achieve. The arena was quiet. The stars above twinkled. Somewhere, across the galaxy, children dreamed of walking as he did, moving with grace and purpose. Elias smiled faintly. The Master had returned. Humanity had returned. The future begins. The next morning, the Colosseum buzzed with preparation for celebrations. Champions from all species approached Elias, offering bows and words of respect. Even the young boy from the earlier rounds stood at the edge of the arena, holding a broom of his own. "You taught me," he said softly. Elias nodded. "Remember, it is not the weapon, but the hand and mind that guide it. Learn that first." The galaxy had watched, learned, and remembered. The laughter was gone. In its place was awe, honor, and respect for the human who had returned with nothing but a broom and the mastery of a legend. The final words, Elias, stood at the center of the arena. The suns rose behind him, casting long shadows across the sand. He lifted his broom high, not as a weapon but as a symbol. "Tools are nothing," he said, his voice carrying across the silent Colosseum. "It is the hand and mind that guide them. Let the galaxy remember that humanity is not forgotten. Let them remember the masters." The crowd erupted in cheers once more. Across planets and systems, humans and aliens alike spoke his name. History had changed. The forgotten were now remembered. The underestimated had proven themselves.